Linda Finn. She's a founding member of the Rhode Island Coalition Against Gun Violence, and she also served as a Rhode Island General Assembly member, the state representative representing Middletown and Portsmouth. So, Linda, thanks so much for joining me today.
Thanks for letting me come and talk to you. I appreciate it very much.
So we're going to talk a little bit about legislation that the coalition is backing up and supporting for common sense gun legislation in 2018. From what I was reading, there are pretty much 3 big initiatives that the coalition is supporting and looking to push through for 2018 here in Rhode Island. A big one coming up on Tuesday. Talk to me a little bit about what's happening.
Sure. So on Tuesday, the bills that are going to be introduced by Senator Josh Miller and Representative Jason Knight is a bill to ban assault weapons in Rhode Island. We have been, working towards this initiative for many years, ever since Sandy Hook, and it's an important piece of legislation. It's modeled after Senator Feinstein's federal legislation that she's been trying to get passed, which hasn't gone anywhere. So we think that we just need to do it on the state level. Massachusetts has banned them since 1994. Connecticut has banned them. New York bans them. California bans them. There's no reason why Rhode Island shouldn't ban them. And we just feel like it's time. It's time for it to happen. And we've got a lot of support on it. Certainly support from Rhode Islanders on it. We're just hoping that the State House will give us the support as well.
Okay, so we're looking at what's going through on Tuesday is a ban on certain style assault weapons.
Right.
Talk to me a little bit about what this bill looks like, and it's my understanding that there's been legislation trying to make its way through for the past several years, but it's been halted. Do you think this year is different? Do you think the wording in this legislation is different? Talk to me about that.
I think that we're at a tipping point right now. I think it's definitely different. I have been called all week. Our group has been called for people that just say, come talk to us, let us know what we can do. We're just tired of this. It's just time for something to be done. People are just tired of our young people in this country mowing down students and just taking these weapons of war, which is what they are, being sold to 18-year-olds, and people are just fed up with it. And there right now in Rhode Island, I mean, you can go out and buy a 50 caliber gun that can shoot 5 miles, and has been demonstrated to have killed a soldier in the Iraq War at 1.5 miles. Like, why do we have these weapons being sold to kids, basically, and adults? I mean, there's just no purpose for them. They're weapons of war. They're meant to be used in war. They were designed to be used in war, and it's just time. We just know that it's time that people are fed up, and they just know that it's time for us to ban these things.
So efforts have been blocked in the past, and you say there's kind of we're at this tipping point. If efforts have been blocked in the past here in Rhode Island, do you think that there's going to be a fight against it, or do you think we're past that? And if there is opposition, who's it from? Where are you seeing that from?
We definitely will get pushback on it. I mean, there's definitely always opposition. The gun lobby and the NRA has been very active for many years. They're very well organized. They're very active. But we know in Rhode Island that less than 20% of Rhode Islanders are gun owners in the first place, as compared to some other states that have high gun ownership. And we know that people, that we've done it. We did a survey in 2016, which even back then, 2 years ago, Rhode Islanders supported banning these types of weapons by 74%, which was almost 10 points higher than the national average. So we know that Rhode Islanders support this legislation. It's a matter of just convincing the legislators that this is the right thing to do, and it's a matter for people in Rhode Island to contact their legislators and let them know that they feel like this is important. In the last election in Virginia, when they did exit polls, they found that for the first time ever, there was an equal number of individuals that were voting using the gun issue as their main issue. Usually that issue is just for people that are gun rights supporters, but this was the first time that they did this survey that it was actually people that were voting for gun safety measures, and they said it's their number one issue, and that's what they're going to vote on. And so I think that time has changed things, and it's changed people's awareness of just what the laws are.
What are some of the, are we modeling, or are the representatives who are introducing this legislation, maybe with some help from the coalition and members of the coalition, are we looking at other states, for examples, who have put bans in place already? You mentioned Massachusetts, Connecticut, our neighbors, and then other states who already have bans in place. Are you looking at modeling legislation after states that have already been successful in this?
Definitely, definitely. And the legislation that Dianne Feinstein has written, has been, basically lists every single weapon that is on the market right now and is available, to say these are specifically the guns we do not want to have in our state. And so, yes, we're definitely, looking at the model of Massachusetts, looking, the more recent models were Connecticut and New York. And so, we feel like they did it. There's no reason why we can't do it, and it's very similar to what the legislation is that they have introduced.
Okay, interesting. So this legislation getting introduced on Tuesday, you all are holding a rally, correct?
Well, we're holding a press conference. The idea was to just make sure that the legislators were aware of the bill. It's the last day to introduce legislation for Rhode Island. We want to get as many co-sponsors on the bill as we can, and so we're just trying to make sure that the legislators are, aware of the bill, aware of the opportunity to sign on to the bill as a co-sponsor, and we're trying to encourage people to call their legislators to tell them, like, I want you to be on that legislation, like, I want you to support it. So we're using it as an opportunity to introduce it and explain it.
And I think getting people aware that this is out there, obviously what's been happening not only in Florida but in DC as well the past couple days, really an opportunity for Rhode Islanders to talk about what's going on, find out what's important for you and your community, and what you want to happen in your state. I think that's really important.
Right.
And call your legislators, right?
Call your legislators.
And let them know what's important and valuable to you.
Right. Yeah, and it doesn't have to be an argument. It doesn't have to be. It's really just a matter of having a conversation with your legislator and just explaining why you want these weapons banned, and getting into a conversation with them. I mean, I've had meetings in the last couple of days that NRA members have come to, and it's a conversation. Our coalition and our members, they're not trying to ban guns from everybody. We're not trying to do anything that takes away somebody's rights, but like every right that we have, every constitutional right that we have in this country as an individual right is always mitigated by the greater good of the public and for their public safety. And the Second Amendment is no different. We as individuals in Rhode Island can advocate, and we can make changes in the laws. We can decide as Rhode Islanders who gets to have what types of guns and where can they have them, and we can determine that. And so that's what the legislature, that's what we're trying to change, and trying to get that conversation going.
Okay, so that's coming up on Tuesday, that legislation. In 2018, though, you're also working for a few other things, working on banning all firearms in schools, on school grounds, except for police officers or for peace officers. Something that I read put out by the coalition is that Rhode Island is one of very few states that allows concealed weapons on school grounds. Talk to me a little bit about that.
Sure.
And why this is an important initiative for you.
Sure. When we first put our coalition together and we were reviewing some of the laws, our legislative attorney found that there was a discrepancy in the law in Rhode Island, and we think it was actually just a more of a change, just a drafting error than anything. It wasn't something that was done with any kind of reason, because it happened before Columbine even happened, before these school shootings were happened. But basically, essentially, the way the law reads in Rhode Island is that if somebody is able to have a concealed carry permit, they are able to carry that weapon on school property. We're one of only 4 states that generally allows that type of thing, just because it's we feel as though the principals and would want to know if somebody's carrying a concealed weapon. But right now, a teacher could be carrying it, a janitor could be carrying it, a parent could be carrying it at a teacher conference, at a football game. It's a dangerous law for having people that have concealed carry permits. They don't have any kind of training to deal with a situation if there ever arose a situation in a school situation with all these children around. It's just not practical to think that they would be able to really do anything. It's very disturbing to me, the president's comments yesterday about arming teachers It's just so irresponsible for him to have said that, because it's just they don't have training. Even if teachers were to be armed, I mean, they're not going to use a gun in a classroom full of their students. They're just not going to. And what we need to do is ban these weapons that these mass shooters are using, which are these assault weapons, which are just trying to spray as many bullets as possible to kill as many people as possible. So we feel very strongly that we shouldn't have guns on school properties, except for law enforcement and the peace officers. But it's just a safety issue. A couple of years ago, I've heard from people, well, we've never had an incident. Well, in reality, in 2012, there was a janitor that worked for Rhode Island College that had his gun and left it in the men's room on the sink, a fully loaded firearm, in the bathroom, and he was subsequently fired for it. But we just can't have those. Those are the kinds of things where accidents can happen. And a teacher, especially if they're teaching younger kids, like kids want to come up and give you a hug. What are you going to do? Push them away because you have a gun on you? I mean, it doesn't make any sense.
Well, the fact that a parent can come in and not have to identify the fact that they have a concealed weapon on them,
right?
That. To me, that's a little startling.
It is.
I don't know if you have to check it in at the office. I don't know.
Nope. The law is with concealed carries, you have to conceal it so people aren't supposed to know you have it.
Exactly.
And so, part of the bigger issue on that is that there's a national movement to try to do what they're calling reciprocity, passed in the House, but fortunately the Senate in Washington has not taken up the bill. But basically, the gun lobby is saying that these concealed carry licenses are sort of like driver's licenses, and we should just allow everybody from every other state to be able to carry them in Rhode Island. And the reality is that Rhode Island actually has some pretty good gun laws. Like, we have 7-day waiting periods. We do background checks on all transfers of firearms. That's a huge safety measure that we've had in place for many years. And we do, in Rhode Island, you have to show cause to get a concealed carry permit. So you have to go to either your police chief or the attorney general. They don't just give them out, you have to show a reason. So in Rhode Island, we only have about 4,000 concealed carry permit holders, where the state of Florida now has close to 2 million. So if this reciprocity bill were to pass, it would just allow people with the lowest common denominator of rules. Some states don't even do background checks or do any kind of training for somebody to carry a gun. And so we don't want those people carrying guns in Rhode Island anywhere. But we certainly don't, want even people that have them in Rhode Island to carry them on the school property.
So looking at reducing, so we're looking at that as part of the strategy, and then banning assault weapons as part of the strategy, and then also by banning high-capacity magazines as part of the strategy for 2018.
Right, banning the high-capacity magazines. So a few years ago, we just felt like the timing wasn't right for an assault weapon ban, and we felt that the lethality of these guns is more in the fact that they can shoot so many bullets so quickly. So we felt as though banning the high-capacity magazines and just limiting them to 10 rounds would be a safety factor. But in this new bill that's being introduced, it would ban those high-capacity magazines as well. So sort of a combination. We thought that was sort of a compromise measure that might pass, and it didn't really never really went anywhere. So, it's been something that we've been working on, but not successfully having any luck on it.
We've had people in here before talking about common sense gun laws. Do you feel like we've made progress? You spoke a little bit about how Rhode Island is doing a pretty decent job. Last year, Rhode Island passed a law to remove weapons from domestic abusers, those who were convicted of domestic abuse. Do you feel like Rhode Island is making progress and we're working our way?
Oh yeah, that? Oh definitely. I definitely feel like we're making progress. The last year, that bill that got passed, there was just so many legislators that worked so hard on that, so many individuals that worked hard on it. We were very, very grateful to the Speaker and the Senate President that they were able to get that law passed. It's an important law. It's a really important law. Domestic violence abusers are, some of the most dangerous situations that a police officer can get into, and certainly in the bill that we passed last year, it's during that time when somebody's trying to leave their abuser, which is the most dangerous time. And so this bill's that was a really important piece of legislation. And Rhode Island has better domestic violence laws than than the country, and so it's really important. And it was really big. It was a big step for the legislature last year, and so we were really, really pleased. And we know they can do the right thing. We know that that we have legislators that have voted on good common sense legislation. So, we feel good that there's going to be some other bills that will get passed, and and I think, but we're not taking anything for granted.
still working.
Yes.
Working to make things happen. We talked a little bit about kind of those three strategies of working your way through for 2018 legislation. Obviously, we are all eyes are kind of on Florida, on DC right now because of this horrific tragedy, the last mass shooting that we did see in Florida. What have we seen here happen in Rhode Island? Have any grassroots organizations sprung up just since this last tragedy?
Well, there's, as an example, we were contacted by a group that had been started back in 2002 when a woman was killed, and a group of her friends started an organization, and they were very instrumental in helping change our domestic violence laws. And so that group has revived itself. They've changed their name. They've gone from 30 to 300 in about a week. The woman said to me, by Friday we'll have 500 people, and they're just going to be working on these gun bills and gun issues. And so I think that we're going to see an awful lot of just different groups spring up. Another woman sent me an email and said, can you come on Thursday? And 3 days later, she had 40 people just show up and to talk about guns. And so I think that we're going to see our group has 98 partner organizations as it is, and which cover about 120,000 Rhode Islanders. But there's many more groups that are just sort of forming organically to just to do something, and to our children are just being terrified right now. I mean, they're in these lockdown drills. The police are coming into their schools doing them. They have to do them all the time, and they know that these incidents are happening because of the, even if you protect your children from, different websites and different things, they see it. They see so much more now than my children ever did. And it's terrifying. It's just really terrifying. And we as a country have just abdicated our responsibility in allowing these weapons to proliferate to these young men who are using them so, just so tragically. And so I think it's just time that people have woken up and said, the laws need to be changed, and we're going to help get them changed.
Talk to me a little bit about, you just mentioned these organizations that make up the coalition. So before we let you go, Linda, I want to talk a little bit about that. I think there's this fine line, right, where we've seen so many tragedies, we've been a part of this, we've shed tears, and it's so frustrating because it gets politicized, and you don't want it to be politicized because we all want to feel safe in the communities that we're in.
Right.
The coalition you said is made up of 98 partner organizations. Do you feel like after this last tragedy that we all experienced as a country, do you feel like there is a change is coming? Because there's that line of we're desensitized to it, but we all want to take action.
I really feel I was on the phone with one of the parents of one of the students that was in Florida, in the Florida school, and I said to her, thank you for what you're doing, because I feel like there's a tsunami right now of support for this kind of legislation. I mean, I really feel as though this is a turning point, and I just feel like it is, and I can see it everywhere that I look. So I definitely feel as though this is just something where people that normally have not been involved, or just thought somebody else is going to work on that issue, or somebody else is going to take care of it, I think it's just woken people up so much. And I think these young people have just been amazing in how articulate they are, how just, there's nothing political in what they're saying. They're just showing, they're just showing their incredulity at our politicians that we've allowed this to happen. Like, these kids are just saying, why did you let my friends be shot like this? And so it's I just think it's an important moment. I think that people are really relating to these children and, these young people. And, I think I think it is a turning point.
I don't think it needs to be political. Oftentimes these conversations are made political. I don't want to get political. I think we all need to feel safe. So whatever action, I've watched so many different interviews on it. I watched an interview, I think it was on CBS this morning, where a Columbine survivor, he was such a well-spoken man, and he said, it doesn't need to be political. We need to, whatever way you're going to take it, whether it's going to be common sense gun legislation or it's mental health, we need to do both.
Right.
And he was so well-spoken. I was like, he needs to run for office.
I know. Well, I think, you're going to
He was like, don't make it a political issue. Don't
Right.
label it one side or the other, red or blue. He was like,
Right.
we all need to work
Right.
together.
And
to
I
be safe.
and I agree.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that that's true. I mean, I think that unfortunately, the NRA has become a spokesperson for the for the gun lobby, and it doesn't. I don't even think it represents many of the members. In Rhode Island, like if you want to belong to a gun club, you have to join the NRA because that's how they get their insurance for the club.
Yeah,
So
that makes sense.
people belong to the NRA, but they're not just because they're a member. It's almost like they kind of have to be. So they're not really. It doesn't mean that they feel like they're being represented properly. And I think that it's just taken a huge veer from what it used to be, protecting hunters and their rights. And I have a lot of friends that they go to the range. They like to shoot guns. They want people. I respect that people want to keep guns in their home to protect themselves and their family. But it's just people are thinking differently about it now. And even they just did a poll that said 97% of everyone, gun owners, Republicans, Democrats, everyone in this country feels like we should have universal background checks. And I mean, so that's something that's a common ground that we all believe in, but yet our federal government hasn't made that change. So it's it just takes time for politicians to understand what people's issues are and whether they're going to vote for them or not. And so I think it's going to change, and I think this is going to be a big year for it.
All right, well, maybe we can start there and start by doing something here in Rhode Island. Linda, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me. I really, really appreciate it.
I appreciate it too. So if you're interested, all that is getting started here on Tuesday. So we'll continue the conversation and continue to follow that. So Linda, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you. Really appreciate it.
All right, we're going to take a brief pause and welcome our next guest here on GoLocal Live. Thank you.